Both of us are in reds.
Yeah, CLT set.
Good evening, all of you. A very warm good evening. I don't know whether after the first, I would call it Jhatka, the NLAT 2020 is over. That you would have been that you would have written this NLSIU separate exam and not the CLAT exam itself is unbelievable. In an unbelievable year of 2020, you have at least, I think a lot of them, of course, we will come back to that and probably Amitendra will speak about it. But the first of the big exams, apart from, of course, SLAT and LSAT, is now over. 2 more exams to go after this. I'm sure AI, LET and CLAT, and you are waiting for that. But today, Amitendra sir and myself, we will take you through what this NLAT was all about. When the first slot started, in fact, even yesterday, a lot of students did not get their user IDs and passwords. A lot of panic, a lot of worries, and maybe a sleepless night or two was there for the asking. However, at least by the late evening, the NLSIU authorities started sending the messages and also a final mail. And early morning too, they have sent multiple messages with information saying that you guys can start off. Let me also start off even before looking at it as what happened before I go into the 3 slots that happened or that went around for NLAT 2020. The first one, very clearly, the basic highlights. The NLSIU Bangalore decides to conduct this on its own. While there has been, whether it's a political tussle, whether they wanted to start early, whatever may be the case, we will get to know only after later. But the fact remains that one exam, one very, very big institute under the NLU scheme has completed its thing. It was a home proctored in 3 different slots. Different slots. That is, there was different levels of difficulty. There are 2 reasons why the difficulty level. When I come to that, Amitendra, we will discuss this. Lot of technical issues with face verification, face recognition, login issues, and a few students, in fact, not few, quite a few of them have also complained that there was an auto submission much earlier than the 45 minutes which were allotted to that. Few even lost out the opportunity because they could not even log in. Anything which you have got specific from a student or two, Amitendra, as an example?
Yeah, in fact, as you said, so nobody would have expected 15 days ago that NLS Bangalore will be conducting a separate exam. In fact, I still remember 2008 when after intervention from the Supreme Court, all the NLUs had to come together and come with a common examination. Quite surprising, actually. But yes, it has happened and definitely can be inferred as one of the big exams. But just like other home proctored examinations, we saw glitches here too. In fact, while interacting with the students, most of them were in panic mode today since morning, actually. And since yesterday, as you said, because they could not get the links properly, actually, some students got even 2 passwords for the same login and none of them worked. Unfortunately, none of them worked actually. There were quite a number of students who complained about that. Help desk was not helping that much actually. Some could manage to get in touch with them, but most students, they got a reply or it was an automated call. Agents are busy, please call after some time. So it was kind of a setup, like commercial setup, which you have done without understanding like how the students would feel actually. That was the biggest problem. In fact, I would say at least my perception says at least 10% of the students who registered for the minimum 10% have faced difficulties today. And in each of these slots, verification took long. They wanted people to join early, but then there were a lot of issues out there.
In fact, the feedback also was that people the support did not pick up the call. And if at all it reached support, they said, go to NLSIU. And the NLS authorities, unfortunately, did not pick up any calls or were they of any help.
So for this examination, probably this is the first time in the history of CLAT in last so many years that a top ranker in CLAT will not be going to NLS. In fact, top 50, 55 rankers will not be going to NLS Bangalore, but rather this year they would be heading to Nalsar, Hyderabad. So if you talk about CLAT because of this examination, that's also a point.
Right. Let's get quickly further about what happened. The paper was, of course, conducted in the home proctored mode, and 4 general passages were given to you. Each passage had 10 questions, obviously 2 of each of the 5 sections that they talked about: the English, GK, legal, logical, and of course the quantitative technique section. Time allotted was 45 minutes. The marking scheme, just to reiterate, was +2 marks for every correct answer, minus 0.5 for every incorrect answer, but they also had minus 0.25 for every unattempted question too. Now, why is that important? Because you could not go to the next question. You could not go to a next question without having either answered the question or leaving it unanswered. Only one attempt per question, and you could leave it when you would have kind of said that, hey, I want to leave this question. Amitendra.
Yeah, in fact, that was one of the options. The 5th option in every question was leave it unattempted. In fact, so generally in papers, if you don't want to mark the answer, you simply click on the next tab and move ahead. But here it was mandatory. So they ensured that you have to mark it that I'm not going back to the question. I have marked leave it unattempted, and then I move to the next question actually.
Perfect. So here is what I'm going to talk about slot 1, because Amitendra, I have written this paper. And though my idea was to check how the paper was and whether there are glitches, etc., kind of things, like Srishti there on the YouTube, she has messaged slot 1 to my mind. Of course, I haven't seen slot 2 and slot 3 was very difficult as compared to what was expected. Now, I'll tell you why slot 1 is significantly more difficult than slot 2 and slot 3, because by the time slot 1 ended, the entire world who were writing slot 2 and slot 3 knew that the quantitative technique section was atrocious. In other words, you knew what to expect from the paper. And if you know what to expect, you can tune your response accordingly to that. And that's exactly what happened to a lot of people. In fact, when I spoke to a lot of students later on in slot 2 and slot 3, and they said, sir, since we were anyway expecting the quant to be difficult, we kind of skipped that. The poor guys in slot 1, and that could be 1/3 of them, they didn't know that the exam would be so difficult, or the quantitative questions could be so difficult, and they faced the brunt. And I'm telling you, and this is something which I can say, it is not that the questions were straightforward. Of course, logic, legal, and possibly English was, in that sense, not very difficult. But even the general awareness section was not that easy. GK section was not that easy. So add to that the atrocity, I would call it, about quantitative techniques. I think the slot 1 probably was the biggest question mark for a lot of people. And I do not know whether they will do the normalization well or not. Given that there are only 76, see, if there are 10,000 seats, if there are 3,000 seats, if there are 1,000 seats, the normalization can work, Amitendra. But now we are talking about choosing 70 students in the general category and 23 from the from the Karnataka general category, and likewise for others. If you're looking at it, and 3 slots, each of about what, 7,000-8,000 students, I think it's a very difficult kind of things. Answer key, I don't think has been released, because there are 3 different things. There are people questions asking, and NLAT may or may not be conducted next year. We will think about it later. Let's finish NLAT 2020 slot 1. This particular paper, to my mind, was not just difficult but also lengthy. This is my expectation, because there are only less number of seats. I would believe that people would not have finished the 40 questions in 45 minutes. In fact, a lot of people would have struggled with their timings as far as this exam is concerned. Of course, people who were well prepared who have gone through all the 5 mocks of CL LST, the Career Launcher LST papers. We have given them all the very difficult and very easy papers. And in fact, like you have said, you know, the kind of quick information that I've got from a student saying that, sir, we got comfortable because we had done 5 mocks under CL, and in a way, except that the quantitative techniques was difficult, I think we were well prepared for it. That was the kind of first level reaction from the students. The second slot, I would like you to take up, Amitendra.
Yeah, in fact, before I talk about the second slot, as you were talking about the mocks, in fact, while going through one of the groups, one of the open groups, I saw students even discussing 2 days ago as to, yeah, where will CL stop? How many mocks they will continue giving for NLAT? It's the paper which is happening in next 2 days, and they are continuing mocks every day actually. So that was a kind of discussion. But at the same time, I was very happy to hear from the students that if you look at the overall, especially from the slot 2 and slot 3 perspective, they said that it was exactly bearing quantitative techniques. It was exactly the level which we got in the mocks, and those mocks really helped us actually. Now, coming to slot 2, which I also gave just for this purpose only. So slot 2, no doubt, was easier given the feedback from the students, and it was quite easier as compared to the slot 1. And by that time, in fact, students got a cue from the other from their peers that this is what is expected. So ideally, one was expected to not get or not think much about the quantitative techniques. And if one went through the question, he would have realized that this is something which I can skip for every passage. Probably leaving it unattempted would have been a better choice than going for an attempt and possibly spending more time. One thing I realized, despite slot 2 being easier than slot 1, but I think time management was key to the paper. If 45 minutes seemed to be less at the end of the, in fact, while I was just reading about the questions, I realized at the end, I finished my paper exactly 3 seconds before the scheduled completion time actually. So time management definitely was the key. But here also, if you look at slot 2, English, legal, reasoning, we had mostly direct questions. So they were doable. One could have easily attempted anywhere between 20 to all 24 questions. That was, so on an average, at least 7 attempts in each of these areas was completely possible. GK to me was a surprising element for those students who may have not worked really hard while they are preparing for the CLAT, or they would have not expected that kind of questions. For example, there were some of the surprise elements, but I think this was more about having gone through that or having practiced. Like one question on Imperial Bank of India. Now, this is a static question most of the candidates would have prepared, and they know that Imperial Bank is now known as State Bank of India, and the first female chairman of the bank was Arundhati Bhattacharya. For me, it was easy because she was from my city, so I could easily relate actually. So she was born and brought up in my city, so I could easily relate. But yes, preparation was required. So those who have really worked hard for CLAT paper, they would not have faced much difficulty in the GK section. So, but still looking at overall perspective of all the students who appeared for slot 2 and having discussions with them, 3 to 4 was a decent attempt as far as those 8 questions in GK was concerned. Similar to slot 1, quant was difficult. Quant was in fact lengthy as well. So probably the best idea would have been to leave the quant questions, leave it unattempted. You would have got probably minus of 0.25 rather than wasting time and having got minus 0.5 actually. So that would have been the idea. Time management was key in this section, but overall an easy one as compared to slot 1.
Right. And the third one, if I look at it, what happened? Slot 3, in fact, I have taken feedback from Siddharth. Siddharth incidentally was saying the same thing, that despite being a very good speed reader, you still could not do the entire exam in 45 minutes almost. I mean, in fact, it took almost the 45 minutes, despite having zero pressure. I think the same thing went on for slot 3 also. They have, in fact, the paper probably was made, as you noticed, from the last 10 days papers as such. The difficulty level continued to be slot 2. Once again, the reason I'll say this difficulty level could have been not very high is not because the questions were difficult or not difficult for that matter, but because the expectation was always that, hey, the quant is going to be lengthy, and that has given that extra time to leave that question, save that extra time, use it for the other choices. I think that way the normalization that is very much required for each of the 3 slots is going to be, I think, critical. To my mind, I really believe that given that only 100 odd seats are there, 70 on the general side, I think it is really a little bit. I mean, I'm being sympathizing with all my students, and that it is a little bit cruel that we had to kind of subject them to this kind of mental tension. Here is therefore what our thought process has been, and I'm sure between you and me, Amitendra, out of the 24 questions of English, logic, legal, 24 questions, let's say somebody could attempt all 24. As far as the attempt is concerned, maybe get 21, 22, 23, especially if you are to be in the top 70, top 100, you need to get almost 21, 22 correct there. That is one way. Then there are 8 questions of GK. To a large extent, a good, well-prepared person can get 5 to 6 correct and maybe 2 wrong, because they will go ahead and answer that. And out of the 8 questions of quantitative techniques, my bet is not to more than 3-4 would be in a way to be solved, and 3-4 actually left. That will leave you 1 negative mark. That is going to be a good, not just good, I think among the very top 10, top 20 students in the country itself. This kind of a approach as such. Would you concur with that?
Definitely, I completely agree with that, in fact. And just to add, before we move on, in fact, if you look at the articles, as you said, they were picked up from sources which have been published in last few days. In fact, some of the articles published in last 5 days, 6 days. I think most of the students would not have even thought about it. They might have probably gone ahead and prepared accordingly and looking at articles published in August, while there were few. One thing which I found similar as far as slot 1 and slot 3 was concerned, 2 of the articles, one was based on Forex in the slot 1 and the second one based on Indian economy, that might have been difficult for some of the students, because I don't think much of our law aspirants read too much about economy as such actually, and that would have been one of the trouble factors. But overall composition, if you look at, as I said, slot 3, the article was quite, in all the slots, the articles were quite comprehensive and one could have easily read. Speed was the game which was required actually. So, of course, given the number of the seats, as you said, how normalization will work, that is something we'll have to wait for.
I will say one more thing, and this is for every one of you who's listening to us on the YouTube today. And probably the NLSIU people also and the CLAT people also should look at it. The level at which they asked you to solve for quant without a calculator, I think it was inhuman. And I'm not saying it because you couldn't have done it as a student, my friend, but there was no need for that. You are going to be a lawyer. You need to understand how to interpret it. Why are you subjecting the would-be lawyers to such kind of level of solutions or ability to solve a plus and a minus and a division and a multiplication kind of things? I think they missed a complete trick there. This is not what they should do. To make it difficult, I think they will not get the great lawyers that they're expecting sometimes. They'll get great mathematicians there in that sense of the word. Shakuntala Devi is there to get your answer. So I don't even know whether the whole objective of trying to do as a test and getting the right kind of people, and you are supposed to be the number 1 NLSIU and number 1 National Law University, whether it's going to get fulfilled or not, I really don't know that.
In fact, whatever the reasons could be behind this, maybe it's politics within the consortium or something else. We should definitely be not getting into that. But anyways, we will get to know the outcomes exactly now on 16th of September, because till now Supreme Court has put a stay on the entire process. So they allowed NLS to go ahead with the examination, but they can't be publishing the results. So if at all the entire story was about the trimester system and starting early, now we have already got a stay. And the most unfortunate part, I think this is something which can be discussed at length, but the most unfortunate part, which I believe, that one of the VCs, your ex-VCs have gone ahead to the Supreme Court against you actually. So that they should have realized. The former Vice Chancellor, Dr. Venkata Rao sir, has gone ahead and moved the petition in Supreme Court of India, which allowed, which was heard, and then they said that wait for our next hearing till 16th. Until that, only conduct the exam, nothing else forward actually. So they had to, I think, understand. And he was at the helms for, I think, almost more than a decade at National Law University, Bangalore, actually. So I think probably a consultation with such knowledgeable people was required before going ahead. I strongly
I would
believe
agree
so.
with you completely. And anyway, I hope the entire student community is looking at what do we at CLLST come out as the possible cutoff. Let's go a little further. Let's stop this, the suspense, as I would say, of what we think is the possible cutoffs kind of things. They will get normalization of scores is what the NLSU has promised. Each slot had a different level of paper and the level of difficulty. So let's see how the kind of things. What we are saying is overall, what would be the cutoff? That is what we are going to come out with. Okay, and if you can just quickly tell about what happens if there is a tiebreaker.
Yeah, so obviously with so many students writing, I clearly remember more than 30, this is what NLS Bangalore submitted in their affidavit in the Honorable High Court of Jharkhand. So 30,298 students had registered for the examination. So of course, looking at 120 seats overall, so that's quite a number actually we are talking about. So obviously we expect a lot of ties happening out there. So NLS, even before the examination came forward and stated that, okay, hey, if there would be a tie, this is what we are going to do. So it would be first, they would be looking at your higher number of correct attempts in the legal reasoning questions, which means out of the 8 questions in the legal reasoning section, 2 each from each of the passages. So who gets the higher number of correct answers over there? It's not about attempts. It's not about incorrect or correct out there. It's about correct attempts actually. Who gets correct answers? It's not about just the scores. Then if there is a second level of tie, which means here also we find a tie at this level as well, then they look at the correct answers in overall exam actually. So that is something which they'll be looking out. And if unlucky we are or unlucky you are actually, I would say, then probably a computer-based lottery will decide. So hopefully that how the third tiebreaker of CLAT also works. So that is about computer-based lottery system. But in CLAT, generally given the structure, this doesn't go to that level because age is something which comes in between. Here, I believe probably, I don't know, I'm not sure, but it could even happen that they would reach out to the third level of tiebreaker as well.
Right, and there's one student on YouTube asking Srijita, that is, how many students sat for the exam? I suspect it will be more than 30,000.
No, it won't be more than 30,000 because we need to understand the complications which quite a number of students faced and they could not attempt the examination. So 30,000 was the number of registrations. And in the first slot, NLS came out with their tweets and all those stuff that almost 91% of the students registered for the first slot. So in the first slot, roughly around 7,500 students appeared for the examination. So I believe at max somewhere around 26,000 would have appeared for the paper today.
Okay. And here is what we go to. Finally, our NLSIU expected cutoff this year for NLAT 2020. We believe that the general category, all India level student, given that there are 70 seats available, the cutoff could be around 54, maybe just a shade higher at 55, 55.5. Like Mr. Amitendra has said in the very beginning, 0.25 could make a huge difference too. So it's like extremely close. It could be 54.5, 55 or 55.25 at the top level. The Karnataka student, again, not typically a lot of students will be as good as the all India levels too. I don't see it coming down even by 2 marks, but then we thought we will be on the safer side, maybe 2 marks less. So it could actually be as high and maybe a 1 point less, given the number of students as he's talking about. With 25,000 students writing, only about 120 seats available, out of which 93 are on the general category level. That's just 0.05 numbers. So therefore, this is what your cutoffs is, including for an SC or an ST levels too. I think the cutoffs will be pretty high, given that the number of seats are very low. Your comment on this, Amitendra, before
in fact, completely agree, Aks. And I have been observing CLAT till 2008, and even before that, when NLS Bangalore has been conducting its own examination. So unlike other institutions and other programs or colleges, actually, so here cutoffs don't vary much as such. So if I were to look into the figures, in fact, probably the difference would be, as I said, 0.25 would be a huge enough difference for these kind of examination, given the intake, very low intake, and the number of people compare in the same proportion who appeared for the examination actually. So it's going to be a very tough call, tough competition for. So I think fingers crossed. One of the questions, one of the questions which is constantly coming to us on the YouTube is answer key. Guys, as per the process, NLS Bangalore is expected to release the provisional answer key today, and hopefully they will give time till tomorrow for any objections to be raised, and 14th where the final answer key was expected. So if that is something which has not been stopped by Supreme Court, the Honorable Supreme Court of India, then probably they will go ahead, but not the results. That will be coming out on 60. That will be based on the outcome of the judgment on 16th of September. So answer key is something which we can expect from NLS Bangalore today itself. So I don't know what time they will come out with that, or maybe given the situation today, they would probably refrain from that. That might also be a possibility.
The other thing for all the students who are listening to us carefully, who have gone through a lot of issues, like here Bhavini Jha, who had the paper submitted in 35 minutes itself. The NLSIU, when they gave you the choice, they told you write down the problems and submit back to the support there. I hope each one of you, whoever has faced a problem, send mail to that support mail. Try calling them, but definitely ensure that you send a mail to their admissions@nls.ac.in so that your issue is registered, your problem is registered at their end. Don't miss out. Don't wait for tomorrow before the keys are released. Make sure that you take and send it across to them without fail. Right? With that, I will kind of sign off from here. Amitendra, if you can just give the last few words and then I'll close it.
So guys, finally, whatever happened today has happened. So it's over. So my advice would be get off that, get that pressure off your mind. Actually, probably today, I would advise you, all of you who appeared for the paper, to just chill, relax. But whatever the outcomes would be, just forget about that for the time being. We have another 13 days left for AILET. We have another 15 days left for CLAT examination. And I think your focus should now completely divert to those two examinations. And because they are center-based examination, I'm sure there would be no issues at all. The CLAT has had a great history when it comes to conducting online examinations. But of course, I think this time they would have taken care of everything, having finally decided. So take that pressure off your mind. That would be my advice. Enjoy your evening. And from tomorrow, go ahead and start working for the CLAT once again. CLAT and AILET both are there in the last week of September. Focus should immediately divert over there. Come out of that pressure zone immediately.
I'll completely second that, Amitendra. Every student who's listening to us on YouTube today, first, thank you for being with us also, my friends, that you have kind of consistently believed in CLLST for everything that we have done till now, much more than ever promised. But having said that, we are not done yet. We still have a AILET coming up on 26th and the CLAT exam coming up on 28th. Till that time, yes, you have to go through the norms, go through the keys, go through whatever else that NLSIU gives, but focus. Yes, like Amitendra says, chill out tonight, forget about everything tonight, just go away. But tomorrow, get back into focus for preparing for the last 15 days this year. It has been really tough. I really appreciate every one of you guys and your parents for this. Whatever else the authorities might think, but let's not now give up on this. Wish you all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll stop the live streaming, Rakesh.